be happy to talk to you today about the traps that keep women from reaching the top and how to avoid them. I will not talk about the business case, which was eloquently argued in the video you just saw, and also in the comments that your people of your organization gave in a survey that was made last week. But I will talk to you about, first of all, why it is difficult, and then about what we can do about it to resolve those difficulties. Now, why is gender diversity in leadership difficult? First of all, there are some quite legitimate reasons. Professor Susan Schneider and a team here at the University of Geneva, the business school, have done some interesting research about diversity in teams. And what I found is that diversity, by definition, provokes conflict. Now, if it's cognitive conflict, it leads to a higher performance of the team because you get more ideas who are in competition and the best ideas win. But it can also be emotional conflict, and then it has a negative impact on the performance because people collaborate less effectively. So that means that organizations need to invest time and energy to make gender diversity work. It does not work by itself. And the other reason why it's difficult is that there are 4 traps which I've identified in my research, the article which you have received as a handout to this presentation. And I'll talk about that in more detail. And I will also link this to the results of the survey in your organization. So gender balance in leadership, what's the challenge? Now, if you look at a leadership population in an organization, you can essentially distinguish 3 buckets. First of all, there's the entry level, where people come in from graduate school and then get recruited into the organization in their first jobs. Then you have the high potential population, which is usually being identified and developed somewhere in the age bracket between 30 and 45. And then the third group is the senior level leadership, which generally happens when people get to 45 and over. Now, all of these groups pose specific problems when it comes to gender balance, which leads to particular results, and also has its own particular solutions to resolve those problems. Let's go through them one by one. First of all, at recruitment level, one problem can be that you recruit less women than men. In other words, you have a clogged pipeline. What's the result of that? Well, is that you're selecting from less than 100% of the available talent, and you have to ask yourself whether that really gives you the quality in the organizations you need. What are the possible solutions? Frankly, one of them is to accept that and to say, well, okay, we go for recruiting only men and 50% of the population, and we'll make sure that we're so good compared to our competitors that we get the best men out of those 50%. It's difficult, but it's something you could do. The alternative would be is to say, well, actually we don't accept that and we go for the 100% of talent. We try to get the best from that by changing our employer brand in such a way that we get the best out of them and that they come to us rather to somebody else. The second group, the high potentials, what's the issue there is that you see that sometimes or often women drop out between that age bracket of 30-45, or their careers get stalled, usually having to do with raising a family. So in other words, you have a leaking pipeline. Even if you have recruited an equal number of men and women, you lose more women in this high potential group. What's the result? The result is that your return on investment on women is lower than your return on investment on men. I mean, for these high potentials, you've recruited them, you've put in a lot of time and effort and money to develop them, and you want to get more out of them once they progress further. And if women drop out, then you get a lower return on investment. What are the possible solutions? One is, what you see often there is what I call fixing the women. You look at these figures and say, well, women must have a problem because they drop out and the men stay. So we must throw training and all kinds of measures, women's networks at them to make sure that they stay in our organization. Well, actually what you're doing there is trying to adapt women to the existing organization rather than changing the organization to make them more attractive for women, which is it's the best solution. And for that, it's necessary to remove the 4 traps that keep women from reaching the top, which I'll talk about in more detail in a moment. Then the third group is the senior level leadership, where we have the famous or infamous glass ceiling, women not reaching the very top. And the problem is that a number of missed opportunities for your organization, less innovation, not so good decision making, and also not complementary leadership. What can you do about that? Quota, discussed often. Let's put in a number of senior women at the leadership level, like Norway did with 40% of women in the board. But as you know that now, quota is controversial, and the jury is still out whether it really brings a positive result or not. The other one, again, has to do with the 4 traps. And then another important one to handle this particular challenge is to create a top-down gender balanced culture, meaning that the senior leadership of the organization, the top, really shows that this is important and walks the talk with regard to gender balance in leadership. All right, let's now look at how these particular challenges pan out for your organization based on the survey that happened last week. Show you some statistics. So in the first group, so the intake group, P2 and P3, as well as national officers, you see that there is indeed in the field particularly a case of a clogged pipeline where the intake of women is considerably lower than the intake of male talent. In the field it's 148 men versus 77 last year at that level. And at P2 and P3 level, as well as national officers, you see it's 230 versus 75 women. So that's something worth looking into. Then at the high potential level, P3 to P5, we see that in the headquarters in Geneva and New York, the gender balance is reversed in the tradition from P4 to P5, and notably in Geneva. So where you have 57% in P4, that number drops to 47% in P5, and the question therefore can be asked whether you have the same return on investment on your female talent as on your male talent, and another point worth digging in further. Then finally, at the top level, D1 and up, on the one hand we see that in the headquarters, Geneva and New York, there is an imbalance, 4 women versus 6 men. It's not a big imbalance, but it's nevertheless apparent. And in the field, it is more clearly apparent where there are only 2 women versus 6 men. Again, a point worth digging into to see what are the explanations behind it and what potentially can be done about this. Now, the 4 traps that keep women from reaching the top. There are 4 traps, and each of those have, on the one hand, a short-term solution, helping the individual women which are now in your organization dealing with the current situation, the current context, by offering them individual coaching or by putting them together in a group coaching. And then to have more structural, long-term improvement, it's worth to consider consulting. Now, the first trap is the equal treatment trap. Different gender means different needs. Organizations tend to treat people equally. One size fits all. They are careful not to discriminate. However, different people, and particularly if you look at men and women, they may have different needs. And the result of this is that organizations may spend a lot of money and effort on benefits and processes which don't have the desired results in the sense that they motivate or retain people. And your people commented on that as well. One person said recruitment is not flexible enough to consider spouse employment and dual careers. Flexible work arrangements are still not encouraged. Support of spouse employment, flexible work arrangements, including telecommuting to arrange family situations, allowance for family care. And then, indeed, any intervention should be based on a true assessment of the situation. So, short-term solutions, individual or group coaching, focus on the question, how will I, as a woman, get my particular needs met within the context of the organizations I work for? And then to look for more structural solutions, it's worth to do an audit of your culture and your processes to see whether there are improvements that can be done with regard to this particular trap. The second trap has to do with the men and women are alike trap. Often the assumption is that men and women are alike, whereas there's enough reason to show that's not the case, particularly on the leadership. Unfortunately, what happens is that organizations tend to base their leadership development system, competency frameworks, for example, 360-degree evaluations, on how to make men successful in male organizations, because they look backwards to see what have successful leaders done in the past and how can we develop new leaders to do exactly the same. However, those successful leaders in the past were usually men in male organizations. So there's often a hidden trap in these leadership development systems. Now, some quotes from the organization. A male-centric culture is not always easy for a woman's approach. I would require managers to spend more time speaking to women to understand their aspirations, because indeed they may express themselves in a different way than the men. Do an in-depth analysis of the organization to find out what are the barriers, hidden obstacles to achieving gender balance in the OHCA context. This survey is not enough. Try interviews and focus group with both men and women. So some important points from the organization. Again, here coaching can help for the women who are currently in this situation around the question how to make sure that I am fairly evaluated and with the right criteria. And consulting, again, an order of culture and processes to see what specifically can be done about your organization. Trap number 3, the career trap. Different gender means different progression over time. Careers in organizations tend to be traditional linear careers, which progress over time and never stall. And that doesn't help women who may want to slow down for a while when they have young children and then accelerate again to continue their career path. And our career system do not always allow for that. As do the people in your organization comment, HR policies preclude women from having families whilst maintaining successful careers. Women might put their career on hold while building a family, which does not mean they are not committed, just that they postpone their career development to later. Career management that recognizes that women have career challenges that are different from men. And a specific measure would be to provide career and counseling support for all members of staff, but especially women, so that they can be supported to ascend to management positions. Again, here, coaching can be a short-term solution about how do I realize my potential in a way that fits my personal life, and more structural solutions to offer career empowerment work which helps women leaders and leadership candidates at large to structure their career in a way that fits their life, but also gives them the opportunities that they deserve according to their talent and potential. Finally, the do as the boys trap. Different gender means different behavior. What we often see is that by lack of role models, women tend to emulate male role models, so behave like men in order to get to the top. That gets them only so far because there is an anti-reaction to this behavior, and it's not helpful to women's career. And some women don't even try because they think, well, I have to behave like a man in order to get there, so I put my career or my ambitions on hold, which is a shame with regard to using the full potential of female talent. So some comments for your organization. To be honest, I don't see OHCA functioning without the gentle yet firm hand of the mother figures we have in the system. So here you have an example of a female authority which seems to work, and that's an example of female authenticity. Then on the other side, role models and mentors are few. Women are not men, says somebody else, so please do not act as men. Each of us have an added value. And finally, because it's more difficult for women to break the glass ceiling in a male-dominated world, the women who do make it have had to take male traits to get there. So what can you do about it? Again, coaching can help the women currently in an organization how to leverage my difference, my femininity, into professional success. And a more structural first impressions workshops where you can help women to deal with their behavior, the way they look, to make sure that they make an impression that gives them self-confidence as a leader, and does not give any anti-reactions because they are forced into a behavior which does not fit them. So these, in a nutshell, are the four traps: equal treatment, men and women are alike, career trap, and do as the boys, which each have some suggested solutions about how you can do things on the short term and on the long term. And again, the people in your organization, if you look at their comments, they are quite aware of these traps and also have suggested some helpful solutions how to get out of that. I thank you for your attention, and I wish you every success with discussion and to creating an effective and successful gender balance in your leadership.